Hi, my name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas and an expert in the area of personality disorders. And today, I wanted to talk about if you can read my mind. And specifically, we're going to talk about mind reading. So how accurately can you read someone's mind or feel that you can read someone's mind by looking at their face and judging their body language? And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today and how it relates to those with and without borderline personality disorder. So let's get into it. And the goal of this video is to help you identify how well you can or cannot determine someone's thoughts, emotions, and intent based upon their facial expression and their body language. Now, we also have to be aware of what are called cognitive distortions. And in this case, we're going to talk about the distortion of mind reading. So what is mind reading? Well, mind reading is the ability or the belief that we know what someone is thinking, feeling, and intending to do based upon their facial expressions, the words they're saying, the tone they're using, and their body language. So why do folks, and I've seen this a lot in my clients that have borderline personality disorder or even borderline personality disorder traits, and so why do these folks believe or why do they use mind reading? So they try to beat someone to the punch. So in a lot of ways, this is a protective factor. And they try to prevent themselves from being rejected, from being hurt, from experiencing pain, and all those other negative issues that make up that core content that drives that borderline personality disorder or other types of issues that drive your fear, concern, abandonment issues, sense of emptiness, and other types of factors as well. And so we believe that if we can beat someone to the punch, that we won't be hurt. Okay? Now, most research is focused on borderline personality disorder and facial emotion recognition, which we will talk about, and I will discuss the cognitive distortion of mind reading and how it can be a really big problem. Okay? Now, research has found that those with more severe symptoms of borderline personality disorder were less accurate at detecting neutral faces and tended to perceive them as negative. Now, what this means is that neutral face would be like a plain face, and they tend to perceive that as negative. Okay? And they could sometimes perceive that negativity as hostile or other types of issues as well. Now, those with severe borderline personality disorder symptoms were also more attuned to faces that indicated interpersonal rejection, fear, sadness, disgust, and anger. So what does this mean? Well, it means that those with borderline personality disorder are good at identifying negative emotions in others' faces, but tend to misread neutral emotions as negative. So there's a tendency to perceive neutral faces as negative, but identify negative faces as negative. So what happens is that fills your bucket of negative more than is actually present. So we got to be aware of that. That mind reading is skewing you to the negative. Okay? So folks with borderline personality disorder we know are more highly attuned to those negative emotions and they notice them more often. Now, this does not mean that the perception of negative emotions helps to understand another person's intent. This actually adds to the drive to determine intent based upon another person's facial expression. And we can add body language to that, verbal tone, words that are spoken as well. So there's this tendency to mind read, to interpret intent based upon neutral faces. So when people aren't even mad or upset or everything is nice and calm, individuals with borderline personality disorder have a tendency to perceive the negative, to go towards the negative. So what happens with mind reading is that they tend to mind read, imply intent that that person is mad, they're going to leave them, they hate them, the relationship is going to dissolve, even though the individual may not actually be showing any signs of problems with the relationship. So now this is where complexity and confusion comes in, as those with borderline personality disorder are likely to take the negative information and kind of run with it, right, as we just talked about. And this implies that negative intent. But remember, not everyone who is sad, afraid, disgusted, or angry is out to harm you. And that's a hard thing for a lot of folks with borderline personality disorder to learn and get used to. So this is that cognitive distortion component, right, that I mentioned just a moment ago. And that leads to problems, which is mind reading, and causes this to be an intense trigger or emotional button to engage in that negative beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that reinforce your borderline personality disorder. Because a lot of my clients that have borderline personality disorder, a lot of times what they'll say is, well, if I can beat you to the punch, and if I know it's going to be negative, then I won't be hurt as much as if I'm caught off guard. But the problem is a lot of those relationships don't have time to succeed. So you end up with a lot of failed relationships that may have succeeded if not for mind reading, that you believed it was over, that there was a sense of anger and disgust and other types of factors that you internalized that set off the borderline personality disorder reactions that cause you to engage negatively in your relationships. Okay? So what can you do about mind reading? Okay. So first and foremost, if you tend to mind read, you need to stop, listen and observe, think, and calmly reason how to respond. Easy to say, but hard to do, right? But you likely get into trouble when you take the negative perceptions you're interpreting, whether it's real or false. You draw a quick conclusion and intent, and then you react. So what happens is you're taking in this negative information, this negative perception, this negative mind reading, and you're running with it and having a reaction that may not be genuine, that may not be occurring in that relationship. So you're not analyzing the data that's related to your relationship. And that's why it's real important to slow down, listen and observe to yourself as well as to the person you're interacting with. Think about it and commonly reason how to respond. Okay? Now, when you try to calmly think about the situation, this will help you make better choices. Slowing down is the key, and it's critical. Okay? You have a good brain and can reason. You may not think you do. You may think that, well, I have this horrible borderline personality disorder brain and it's never going to help me and it's against me and all this other stuff. It's not your enemy. Your brain is not your enemy. But when you're pushed, right, it can blur. That borderline personality disorder causes what's this BPD lens that I've mentioned in some of my other videos as well. And this BPD lens causes this distortion, which can sometimes encourage mind reading. It takes away your ability to accurately perceive those around you and recognize your own skills and ability to manage and control relationships. Okay? So it tends to lead, this mind reading as well as that BPD lens that I mentioned very briefly, and it causes you to have this perspective leaning to very negative outcomes that leads to these negative outcomes that are unnecessary and hurtful. So what I want you to do is I want you to try slowing down, listen and observe to what is going on. What's going on inside you, right? What's going on outside, what's going on with that other person you're interacting with. I want you to think it through. What are the possible outcomes? What's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? And what can you do to encourage the best thing to happen? And sometimes that's tough, right? Because your borderline personality disorder, that brain part of you is telling you mind reading's right, you know it's right? So they're going to hurt you, they're going to leave you, they're going to abandon you. So you're better off reacting and having a negative reaction and pushing them away or harming yourself or something like that so that you don't end up being as hurt. But what I have found, and I think in working with some of my clients as well, is we end up with that negative outcome a lot worse than if we believed we could have turned it into a positive. So again, just to reiterate, stop, listen and observe, think, and calmly reason how to respond. Please try it. Leave a comment, let me know how it goes. Continue these skills, continue it every day, multiple times throughout the day. This is a skill building process. And over time, you'll build that skill until it becomes automatic. You can replace those maladaptive patterns with adaptive and helpful patterns. It just takes time to do it. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for your time and attention. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.